Hi everyone, my name is Amy, and this is the first ever digital Let's Just Say. Let's Just Say is a monthly storytelling show that happens at Go Comedy Improv Theater, normally in front of a live audience. However, due to the obvious stuff that's going on, coronavirus and the lockdown, we are not able to bring you a live show. And so this is our first attempt to still bring this show to you from the safety of our own homes. For this first foray into the digital format, I thought it might be a good idea to approach some of the storytellers who have done the show repeated times and have them record what was basically their favorite story that they've done so far for our live show. So in effect, this is basically sort of a best of, let's just say, so far. Now, if this were the live show, I would also have to tell you that stories have a 7-minute time limit, and that I regulate that with my tiny harmonica. I, however, cannot regulate these stories because they are pre-recorded videos, so I'm just wearing this for warm and fuzzy feelings. But yeah, we hope that you enjoy this show. I'm going to start us off by telling a story myself. This story, I originally performed it was 2 years ago exactly. And the theme of that show was force of nature. Now, my story takes place on a specific day in world history because a worldwide event had happened that day. It was August 21st, 2017, and that was the day of the solar eclipse. And I didn't particularly care about the solar eclipse. However, I did happen to have a pair of those goofy-looking glasses that people wear when they watch the eclipse, that you kind of look like Biff's friend in Back to the Future. I had one of those glasses in my pocket because a coworker had gotten one for me. But I incidentally had scheduled a doctor's appointment on the day of the eclipse. And my doctor's appointment was actually when peak eclipse was happening. So I was there, and it's weird. Once the eclipse was happening, I was interested in it. And so I was sitting in the waiting room, and then I'm just what, I want to experience this. And I go outside, and I put on the glasses, and I'm just standing there staring at the sun. And a weird thing happens. A crowd starts to congregate, and it's patients that are on their way into the doctor's office, and then eventually doctors and nurses start coming out to see what's going on. And everyone is just hey, could I wear your glasses for a second so I can see? And I'm yeah, sure. Pre-corona world. So we're passing around my glasses, and everyone's so grateful that I'm sharing my glasses. They're people are offering me to give me $1 for letting them use my glasses, and I'm that's fine, that's unnecessary. And then this nurse is oh, we're comping your doctor's appointment. And I'm okay, lady. And so I don't think anything of it, and then I have my doctor's appointment, and I'm coming back out, and sure enough, that same lady is standing at the front desk, and she's you're all set. And I'm really? Did I just get free medical care? What planet am I on? And so I just scurry away before she can change her mind. And I walk out into the world, and I feel amazing. I feel there's endless possibilities. I mean, I just had this very cool interaction with all these strangers, and then I got a medical fee wave. I just feel oh, I'm gonna ride this wave of weird, supernatural seeming things happening. So I was I got $60. By the way, this is only a matter of $60, and I'm thrilled, but that's another story. So I have $60 burning a hole in my pocket, and I'm you know what? this is such a unique day, and I just feel like there's magic in the air. I'm gonna put this towards something really positive. I'm gonna get a Planet Fitness membership. I don't know. I wish I had a cooler idea, but that's really what came to my mind, because I'm like, you know, that would really make a positive difference in my life, me having a gym membership. So I drive to Planet Fitness and I park, and my heart is true. I'm walking into Planet Fitness, and then I just change my angle slightly and walk into Petco instead, and I buy birds, which was very spontaneous, but really it kind of wasn't, because I had been wanting birds for a really long time, like decades. But I'd always like made an excuse. I mean, sometimes it was a real excuse. Sometimes I would have roommates who didn't want me to get birds, but other times it was just kind of me putting off doing something that was going to make me happy. And it made my life better right away. I got these 2 little parakeets, and they are just little, like, cheerful little puffballs that also, you know, run around my hardwood floor like tiny velociraptors, and they're singing when I wake up so that I feel like a princess. And they are plump, and there's a green one that I named Jules, and he's kind of the tough guy, which is a hilarious thing to say about a parakeet. And then the other one, Chloe, she's just like a cumulus cloud. She's so puffy. And when they get tired, they kind of like tuck themselves into their body and they get really puffy, and they put up one leg and they tuck their head behind their back, and it's just the cutest thing in the whole world. I really like that things played out the way they did. Oh, and the epilogue to the story is 6 months later, I went to the doctors for my next doctor's appointment, and they were like, yeah, by the way, you have a $60 balance. And I was like, okay. So I just ran out of the doctor's office without paying. But I'm so glad that I thought that I was getting a free doctor's appointment, because who knows when I would have bought birds otherwise. And I love this story because I really like the spontaneous moments in life, because I just feel like most of life is just like plodding along and making like gradual progress at whatever you're trying to do. But then there's these moments in life, whether it's quitting a job or you meet someone that you spontaneously decide to see them again, anything like that, anything where you make a big choice. I love those moments because it's like you're acting on pure instinct. And those are also the moments that end up in stories, because usually life changes slowly, and with events like that, life changes very quickly. So I love that I did this thing that made me really happy in a very spur of the moment way, where I was just like, I don't know, I'm kind of riding a wave of really good things happening. Let's continue this. So that's my story, and the birds are here. They are, I feel like I should show them to you, but they're far away because they tweet really loud, so they would have really interfered with my storytelling. But yeah, that's my story, and I've had them for almost 3 years now, and we are close as ever. So with that, I am going to introduce our first storyteller, other than me. His name is Jeff Milo, and he is a longtime Detroit music journalist. And here he is telling a story about one of his first jobs in the medical field.
Hey, let's just say I'm Jeff Milo, and let's just say I had a very strange experience that has stayed with me my entire life. When I was 18 years old, barely a week out of high school, I spent 20 days, basically the start of my summer, riding a tricycle in an underground tunnel, was about a mile long, back and forth, all night, with human blood in the basket behind me. Now, how did I do this? Beaumont Hospital was renovating its pneumatic tube system, which is, you'll see it when you go to the bank and you send a deposit. It's that air-powered chute, and they would put in human blood samples to send across campus way over to their laboratory so that they could, do tests and whatever they need to be doing. Well, if this was going to be renovated, the laboratory still needed to have the blood to test on, and so they needed human beings like me to take the human blood to them. So I got stuck with the midnight shift because I was the last one to sign on to this job. I didn't have a summer job going into college, and that was just, good planning on my part. And I signed up late, and I got the midnight shift, so I had to get to the hospital at 11 p.m. at night and get into this little room where I would sit by myself listening on my headphones until someone brought a cart over to me filled with bags of blood. This is a real thing that happened to me. And then I would have to get on the bike and expediently take it about a mile to this 5,000 square foot building. And God, it's just so surreal. Just imagine, the hospital is empty at that point. It very much feels, if you've ever seen it, like Halloween 2, the sequel, where Jamie Lee Curtis is sort of alone in this hospital, and you just feel like Michael Myers might come around any corner at any point. I didn't even see janitors. I didn't see anybody. It's just me in the very lower levels of this hospital, riding a tricycle filled with blood. But, this really got me thinking about the direction my life should be taking. That's such a formative moment in your life, 18, right out of high school. And you get to do a lot of thinking when you're riding a tricycle full of blood about where you want your life to go. But what really stuck with me is that I would get to the laboratory and the elevator doors would open and there'd be 30 or 40 people in this giant laboratory. I'm talking about the entire floor was this laboratory, and people were just busy all over the place. 40 people there at least, masks on, doing this work. It was just so kind of incredible to see all of these human beings working on the actual discorporated essence of other human beings, so that they could then send those results back to a doctor and maybe save that person's life. Really drove home to me how there really is activity in a hospital 24/7, 365 days. And also got me kind of curious about these people who are working in the lab, the technicians, and how their life got them here and what their story was. And what I wound up doing later, when I got real jobs that didn't involve bikes and blood, was I became a journalist because I was really interested in people's stories, and I became kind of comfortable with odd hours because of this weird midnight shift that I had. So that wound up, me becoming this music journalist where I was just talking to people about their lives, and often doing interviews at 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night. So that just got me thinking. But it also meant that I got to listen to a lot of great music, and some of my favorite albums to this day, some of the albums that I consider to be my favorites. The memory of my enjoyment of those albums is intertwined with pedaling this blood bike. But it is funny to think that, anywhere in the world someone could be doing something pretty odd as a job. And anywhere in the world at any moment of the day, 2:45 in the morning or whatever, there are people working. And in a hospital situation, there are people doing very important work. So I guess just rest assured that if you do have to go to the hospital, and that's a scary thing to think about lately, but that people are going to be working their asses off at all hours of the day to try and take care of you. And even if those pneumatic tubes go down, they're going to find a kid, a diligent kid who isn't sure what he's signing on for, to get on a bicycle and make sure that your blood gets tested on by tricycling it over to them. So it just got me thinking that that was just a weird little moment in my life. And if you could think back on what was a weird moment for you and how it formed you, how you are today, and your outlook and your morals and everything, think back on that for a second. Could be interesting. Anyway, take care.
Diligent kid turned diligent adult. That was music writer Jeff Milo about one of his first jobs. If you'd like to hear more from Jeff, check out his blog Ideas Adrift, where he writes his musings on music and life. Next up, we have Jen Clark. She is a very talented actress, improviser, and a woman of some other talents too, which she will tell you about. This story was originally told at our Ghost Stories edition last year, October 2019. Here's Jen.
So I had always known that I have some sort of sensitivities, psychic gifts, and it wasn't really promoted in my household because I grew up in a very religious household where my mother told me that anything of that sort was not from God. So I sort of figured out ways to shove it down and not really pay it much mind. And then one night, I was watching a comedy show at Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle, and I was sitting with my girlfriend, and right in the middle of the show, I became aware of a presence. It was a male presence, and he was tapping me on my shoulder and just saying, hey, I gotta talk to that girl. And he was pointing to the young lady sitting across from us. And I just thought to myself, this has to be all in my mind. I just don't believe that this is really what I'm experiencing. So I told this gentleman, this thing, if it's so important, just come back at the end of the show. And so the show ends, people are filing out, finishing their drinks, and so was I. And sure enough, he came back and he tapped on my shoulder. Hey, I need to talk to that girl. So I had to make the very uncomfortable decision of reaching out to a total stranger and asking her if she knew of a guy named Fred. And she just looked at me with this utter look of shock, and she just said, yes, I know a guy named Fred. How do you know Fred? And at that point, this guy started to corroborate everything, including showing me what he looks like from head to toe. The fact that he wore beige from head to toe, like an army off-duty uniform. That he liked his hair cropped tight and always have a clean-shaven face. I said he also thought you looked like a flamenco dancer, and he loved to dance, and he called himself Fred Astaire. And she's just utterly flabbergasted. In the middle, she had to get up and leave the table. I felt really bad, like I was causing her pain, and I was about to ask, and the husband says, listen, she works in a nursing home, and this guy, Fred, she used to take care of, he passed recently, and so that's why she's so upset. So she comes back to the table, and she was asking me some more questions, and I was telling her, he wants to show me how he passed and tell you. And she says, okay. And so he's showing me, he's curled up in a ball, clutching his chest, the bottom under a table, and the table is like an 8-foot long table of food. And she says, he died the day after Thanksgiving. And through all of this, we just went back and forth. I told her exactly what Fred was telling me. And finally she said, but why me? And I said, what? She said, why is he picking me? He had a family that visited him. I just don't understand why he's reaching out right now. Why is he doing that? And so I asked Fred, and he basically stated to me that he treasured her as a friend, and he wanted her to know that where he was now, he's safe and he's happy. And he just wants to tell you that you meant something to him. You treated him with respect and care, and you were his friend. So he wants you to know he's okay. And she was crying. I was crying. Everybody at the table took this collective breath. And then my girlfriend, Catherine, just screams, I didn't know she could do this. And then I screamed back at her, I didn't know I could do this. So, yeah, every couple of years, I get a spirit trying to talk to me. I don't know. I just call myself the last-ditch medium because I can't imagine I'm anybody's first pick on trying to communicate with their loved ones. But, I mean, I got to be that for Fred, and that was pretty cool.
That was actress, improviser, and reluctant medium Jen Clark telling a story that she originally told at our Ghost Stories edition last year. Next up is a longtime friend of the show, Yevgenia Gazman. She will be telling a story to you that was originally told in the show themed Luck. This is a story about her journey with mental health. Here she is.
I called and got an appointment with a psychiatrist. I could not believe it. In 2011 in Minnesota, psychiatrists were an endangered species. I had not seen one in 4 years. I was lucky to get an appointment. First semester of law school, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Oh, I still graduated with a GPA promising a lifetime of rejection and debt. And when I graduated, I was told that there is a shortage of psychiatrists and I would probably be seeing a nurse practitioner. And that's what happened. I saw Kathy. Kathy was great. I did great in her care. I rented my first apartment, figured out what to do with bills. I carefully put them into protective sheets in a 3-ring binder because they looked important. I did great at work. I was promoted twice. I was accepted into my top choice MBA program. And then I moved. Kathy's office was too far, so I needed to find someone else to keep me on track. When I'm doing well, I am fiercely competitive. So I thought, hey, maybe I could do even better. I decided, why not try to upgrade from a nurse practitioner to a psychiatrist? I called, and I got an appointment. I couldn't believe it. I walked into the psychiatrist's office, sat directly across from him in my work slacks and my nice work top. And I looked at him and I said, hey, I'm here for med maintenance for bipolar disorder. He paused and looked at me and said, why do you think you're bipolar? I stopped talking. The question threw me off. He reached across his desk for a DSM, flipped to the page of bipolar, hands it to me and says, read. Out loud, I did? Does this describe you? At this point, I had been on medicine for bipolar disorder for 7 years. The appointment was coming to an end, and I was ready to leave and find another doctor. But then he said that word that flips on my on switch like nothing else. Test. He was going to test me to confirm my condition. I love tests. I took the SAT numerous times, ACT, AP exam. When the LSAT was out of my life, I felt a real void. I mean, what does this entail? X-rays, MRI, genetic panel? I don't care. I am in. Test me. Well, I met with a psychologist. There was an epic length multiple choice exam and a session filled with personal history and cognitive challenges. When I left her office, I felt like my brain had been wrung out. And I passed for sanity and failed for any kind of mood disorder. At most, the psychologist thought that I had lived through trauma. My second appointment with a psychiatrist, I already had my results. I was angry that I had been on medicine for a condition I don't have for 7 years. If I don't have bipolar disorder, I'm not going to take medicine for bipolar disorder. Well, some people take medicine for other reasons. It was too late for that conversation. The grip that I had on reality released at an unfathomable speed. I didn't think I needed to go back on medicine. I thought I was in withdrawal. I applied to rehab. I lost my mind. I took a medical leave from my job in Minnesota, moved in with family in Michigan, signed up for a feminist convention in Washington, D.C., obsessed over a sensational murder I read about on Facebook, walked alone from Arlington, Virginia to Bethesda, Maryland to the site of the murder. I was handcuffed, repeatedly hospitalized, pinned down and sedated, lived in a drug house, filed for bankruptcy, took every single pill I had at once, and I called 911. 15 years into life with bipolar disorder, I am the perfect balance of experience and hypochondria. When I notice the slightest shift in my thinking or spending or willingness to get out of bed, I call my psychiatrist, and he goes to battle with insurance companies, coordinates care at hospitals, cares for me like I'm his own daughter. When I brought him a copy of one of my first articles published in the Jewish News, he was genuinely proud of me. When I showed him one of the videos of my storytelling performances, he couldn't look away, even though other patients were waiting. And when I was admitted into the Michigan State Bar in 2018, he was nearly moved to tears. I am lucky to have a great psychiatrist and psychologist and PCP and neurologist and OBGYN and dentist and acupuncturist and personal trainer and mother. And I know I'm forgetting half the team. It takes good health care to thrive. Good health care is the difference between giving up and giving back. And good health care cannot and should not be left to good luck. Thank you.
That was Yevgenia Gazman telling a story that she originally told at our live show that was themed luck. Next up is Alex Ketchum. He will be telling a story that was originally told in our beginnings themed show. This is a story about him moving from his home in Kentucky to Japan.
In 2007, I moved to Japan, a country where I did not speak the language, to teach English, a language my friends have told me I do not have a strong grasp of. To this day, I think there might be kids out there somewhere that sound like a poor man's Larry the Cable Guy when they speak English. To them, I'm sorry. I was their teacher. But I was really excited about going to Japan because I had talked to some people, one friend in particular who had lived there for quite a while, and I'd heard all these epic stories. And the whole reason I wanted to go there was to, kind of live life my way, take control. I graduated college, and I was wanting to live life my way, so I wanted to do something different. And Japan is very different from Tennessee, let me tell you, in every way possible. But the people there are very nice, and they made it a fairly easy transition. I remember one of my first days going to work, which I took a bicycle to work, right? I hadn't ridden a bicycle since I was like in 8th grade, and this was like an old hand-me-down, and it's like my second day, and I'm riding to work, and the chain pops, and I just went ass over tea kettle right into a vending machine. So, if somebody ever says like, oh, it's like riding a bike, maybe that ain't so easy. I bought this big carton of milk. I had a carton, at least I had a cow on the outside. I thought it was milk. Took a big old swig, and it was yogurt. I remember like a little kid was walking beside me, and he looked up and he saw that I was like a white guy, not Japanese. So he just starts running circles around me going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Well, that's pretty good English. So I just high-fived the kid and went on my way, Man, there were so many wild things that happened. But I was most excited about, after I got to Matsuyama, which is the city I lived in, on the second weekend that I was there was going to be a festival, and I was really excited about it. But the festival started at 5 a.m., and I'm not a morning person, so I just figured I'd stay up all night, because the bars don't close there, and you can do that. Well, I did that. Wasn't the best decision. I had a local guy take me there. We were both pretty drunk, and we were watching the festival, and there were so many people. We got separated. So on the way home, so eventually, I'm watching this festival happen, and what the festival was like, there's these portable shrines called mikoshi, which are pretty large. Like a big team of people carry them, and they weigh about as much as a small car. And two rival teams representing two different neighborhoods will be carrying these things, and then they start running and they ram them together, and they try to push the other team backwards or to the ground. And if you can kind of dominate the other team that way, that means your neighborhood gets a better harvest. So we're watching all this crazy chaos and this huge mass of people. And eventually I'm like, all right, I gotta go home. Sometime later, I finally found my way almost there, but I ran into one more team. And this team happened to be my neighborhood's team, according to one guy who had broken English and was very, very serious about this festival. It was a little scary, but he wanted me to help carry it because they were my neighborhood team and I'm part of the neighborhood. And as tired as I wasn't about to say no to this guy. So I start carrying this thing with these guys, and somebody starts feeding me beers, and I'm about as drunk as I was the night before already. And we're having a big old time, and one guy who rides the mikoshi, it's usually like the leader of the team, is usually riding on top of it. He kind of grabs the back of my shirt, and like I look, and he points up. So I climbed up there with him. We both cheered, and we're drinking these beers, and the guys are like shaking the mikoshi and chanting a bunch of stuff. It was a wild party. But I just remember that moment, like everything slowed down, and up until then, all of my nervousness and can I really do this for a year, and man, hopefully I can adjust to adjust properly to the culture and everything. All of that kind of went away, and everything kind of went to slow motion, and I had a second to just take it all in, and I just thought, this is amazing. This country is amazing, and I'm gonna have a heck of a time. That was like the moment that the epic 5 years that I spent in Japan really began.
That was Alex Ketchum telling a story that he originally told in our live show that was themed Beginnings. If you'd like to see more from Alex, check out his podcast, WrestleManiacs, available wherever you download podcasts. Next up, Haley Zurich, Detroit comic, will tell another story from our Ghost Stories edition, because what can I say? Ghost stories are cool, and they're a lot of people's favorites. Here's Haley.
On my dad's side of the family, they're from Ohio, and they grew up in the hills of Ohio, so they're hill people, not hillbillies, hill people. And my great-granny Miller was a very spiritual and occult, paranormal, curious type person, so she was really into that stuff. And she taught me how to read palms before I was in 4th grade. She went out ghost hunting before that was even a thing, and one of the things that she did, and that my mom learned about. So the story I'm about to tell isn't actually my story. I'm in it, but it's not my story. It's my mom's story, and I've heard this story so many times. It's actually one of my favorites, and I will tell it on the behalf of my mother. So it starts with a little bit of a prologue. My dad's family is from Ohio. They're like hill people in Ohio. And my great-granny Miller was a very curious and cultured person. She was super into the paranormal. She started doing ghost hunting before that was even a thing. She taught me how to read palms before I was in 4th grade. She did a lot of different things. And one of the things she did is she practiced a form of seance called raising tables. And essentially what you do is you get people together around a light table. So something like a card table would be perfect. And you put your hands on the table and you relax. You sit up tall and you close your eyes and you say, raise, table, raise, raise, table, raise, raise, table, raise. And the idea is that after chanting for a while, you clear your mind, and as a group, you can create a space for a spirit to show up to inhabit the table, and they will answer a series of yes or no questions. One knock for yes, and 2 knocks for no. It's pretty much that simple. However, I'm not going to recommend that you just go out and grab a card table and a couple of your friends to entertain yourself and play this game, because it's not a game. And that's something that my mom learned. So after a couple of summers of going up to her husband's, or going down, I should say, to her husband's family and learning about raising tables and all these different things, she was telling some of her girlfriends at beauty school about it, and they were super, super hyped. And so my mom agreed to go over one of her classmates' house, Rita, to do raising tables. They were all very excited. So my mom goes to this little house in Warren, Michigan, and Rita had just had a baby. So my mom was there, one of their classmates, Alice, was there, and then this other woman that my mom had never met was there. And they all see the baby, and they do the baby thing for as long as they need to do the baby thing, and then they put the baby away, to bed, I should say. And Rita's husband is in the living room watching Cops, and they go into the kitchen, and they do that thing that people do when they start getting into paranormal stuff, where like they're sitting down, they're putting their hands on the card table, and they're like, raise table raise, raise table raise, raise table raise. You know, no one's taking it seriously. But the thing is that if you sit there long enough, like that nervousness, that embarrassment, et cetera, kind of wears off. So they start calming down, and they start getting serious. And when my mom tells the story, she'll always say, and in the distance, you could hear a thunderstorm rolling in. And there was one, apparently. And so their hands are on the table, their eyes are closed, and they're trying to clear their minds. Raise, table, raise, raise, table, raise. This thunderstorm feels like it's getting a little bit closer. The dog that's in the kitchen gets up and leaves the room for no reason. Raise, table, raise, raise, table, raise, raise, table, raise. The lights flicker a little bit, the storm's definitely closer, you can hear the dog whining and kind of pacing in the hallways. Raise, table, raise, raise, table, raise, raise, table, raise. The storm's definitely closer, the TV's getting a little staticky, and the lights flicker again. And all of a sudden, the table lifts. And when my mom tells the story, she goes, it didn't just like lift a little bit, which is what it usually did. It lifted like a good 2 inches. And she panicked because now she was in charge. She was the one that was supposed to facilitate this. And they all look at her and she's like, okay, all right. Spirit, we want you to answer these questions using a table. You'll knock 1 knock for yes and 2 knocks for no. Do you understand? And the table knocks once. Okay. Thunderstorm's still going, dog's still whining, the TV's still going on a fritz. So the first question she asks are, were you a living person? Great. Next question. Were you a man? Thunderstorm, still closer, lights still fritzy. Were you a woman? Okay. Things are feeling more intense in the room. She then asks, did you die recently? Did you die a violent death? Do you know someone at the table? And suddenly, kabloom! The room goes black. The TV's rolling through all of the 58 channels that they had at the time. It was only the 90s. The thunderstorm's raging, the baby's crying, the dog's howling, the husband's pissed off, and my mom's panicking because the table's going boom, boom, boom. So she lifts her hands up, the table drops, the lights go back on, the TV stops rolling through the channels, the baby's still crying, the dog's still howling, and the husband says, it's time for you all to go home. So my mom was super embarrassed and felt really responsible for whatever had happened. And she tried to, next time she saw Rita, she's like, I'm so sorry. And Rita was like, no, I'm actually sorry. I need to talk to you about something, but do you mind if I stop by your house tomorrow and we can talk about it then? No problem. So this is where our hero, me, I know you were dying to know when I would show up in the story. This is where I show up. So my mom is cleaning the house, and I'm like 3 or 4 years old. And if you can put together, I was one of those weird kids. You know, I spent most of my childhood somewhere between playing Goddesses, Princess, Rainbow, Power Rangers, and My Little Pony, Unicorn, Pegasus, whatever, mermaids. And so I was kind of a whimsical, weirdo kid. And my mom's putting away the dishes and wrapping up, getting ready before a guest comes over, and I come around the corner and I go, Mom! She goes, yep. And I go, you gotta come see the angel in your bedroom. And she's like, okay, I'll be there in just a minute. Now, this was not a weird thing for me to say at all. I know some of you are jumping ahead, but this was not weird for me to say. So she finishes what she's doing, and like a good mom, she comes into the bedroom and she says, Haley, where's this angel? And I look around and I go, oh, she's gone now, Mom, but she'll probably come back and want to say hi to you. Big smile, everything's cool. An hour or so later, Rita's there and they chit chat, and then at one point she pulls out a newspaper, and on the newspaper there is a big black and white photo of a teenage girl. And Rita then starts telling my mom about her friend, who my mom didn't know, that was at the raising table session. Now apparently this woman had a teenage daughter who went to a certain high school in the Oakland County area, and she had been murdered in a parking lot. And this woman had spent the last year or two or whatever trying to connect with her daughter through different seances. And this was the first experience she ever had where she had something happen. And I, of course, precociously come around like it's perfectly planned. And I see the picture, the black and white picture, and I go, oh, Mom, that's the redheaded angel that I wanted you to talk to earlier. And after that, my mom never did raising tables again. When I tell this story, I always want to close it by saying that yes, something really fun and exciting happened, and yes, no one got hurt, and yes, it was very lucky that none of those things happened. I don't know what's out there, and you don't know either. So before you start playing with Ouija boards or other spiritual games, make sure you know what you're doing and you know how to protect yourself.
That was Detroit comic Haley Zurich telling a story she originally told at our Ghost Stories edition last year, October 2019. Next up is our last storyteller. This story also incidentally was told at the Beginnings themed show. This is Jeff Mansk telling the story of his coming out of the closet in the early 90s. Here's Jeff.
January 2nd, 1993, I was 23, and I was tired of waiting for a definite sign, so I thought, I'm just gonna, it's a new year, I'm just gonna take it into my own hands and come out right now. So I saw an ad in the back of a magazine for a gay bar downtown Chicago. Randomly picked it as the first gay bar I'd go to. I'd finally feel like, yes, these are my people. I belong somewhere. So my bar experience was limited, not being much of a drinker ever. So when I found out that this one opened at 7 p.m., I thought, well, perfect. I'll get there at 7 p.m. And I drove downtown to the address, and while there was no sign, there was a small plaque on the door, maybe. The numbers were on the door, so everything was blacked out, all the windows and everything. And I worked up the courage, and I walked up to the door, and then I just kept walking. And then I walked around the block, and then I walked by the door again. And then finally I saw somebody else walk in, and I was like, okay, if that guy can do it, so can I. So I did. I opened up the door to an empty bar, and later I realized it's because it was 7 p.m. and it was a bar in Chicago, and nobody would get there for another 3 hours or so. I'd also later find out that I walked into one of the more sordid bars in Chicago, wearing like a sweater vest or something. So I sat down at the bar, ordered my 7-Up or Pepsi or whatever it was, and just kind of thought, like, okay, is this it? Because it doesn't seem to be too much different. Then I figured I'll get up and explore a little bit. I walked to the back of the bar and walked down some stairs into a small room that was big enough to hold a pool table. It had a bar on one side of the room, and on the other side there were 2 doors. So continuing my exploration, I walked through one of those doors and into a black cinder block room, maybe about 15 by 10, and it was only lit by one red light bulb hanging from the middle of the ceiling. It's obviously a secretive room, obviously where things, possibly bad things, went on, and these were the things that shouldn't happen in the rest of the bar. So I deduced this must be the kissing room. Like when 2 leather people or whatever were like, hey, I like you, dude, but we can't kiss here. Let's go down to the kissing room. Because they probably wink like that. So having solved that, I walked back upstairs, and it was uneventful for, the rest of 3 hours. Then around 11 p.m., almost like in an instant, the bar was full. It was packed, and I figured this was a good time to go back down and check out that kissing room. There was one other guy in there, and he had his back to the wall. I stood against the other wall and just observed, because that's what I was good at. I was never immersed in getting drunk or anything. I was never immersed in going after the opposite sex. So I was good at kind of being on the outside looking in, but now I was on the inside in the kissing room. Within a few minutes, a new guy walked into the room, walked right in front of the other guy. They turned, made eye contact, and then the new guy dropped to his knees, unzipped, and they were not kissing. And it was happening right there, right in front of me. And my detached observational mind kicked in, kind of like a leather bar Diane Fossey. And I remember directly, my first thought was, that can't be legal? And how are they getting away with that? And do the bar owners know what's going on in the kissing room? And before I could comprehend what was going on right in front of me, and I couldn't look away, the room was packed, and I was smushed against the back wall sipping my 7-Up, and it was horrible. Not because of what was happening, that was kind of intriguing. It was horrible because I couldn't breathe, and I couldn't move, and the temperature was rising, and there was no ventilation in the room. And this was long before I knew anything about panic attacks or my dislike of huge crowds. I just knew I needed to get out. So I aimed myself at the door, and I was focused, and I just went for it. And I was just like smushing and pushing through again, like against a sea of just sweaty people who were all just not kissing, and I was just like, there was loud music and the club music, and I needed to get closer to the door, and there were faces popping up in front of me, and I was screaming at them like, I'm trying to leave, and no thank you. And I kept moving, squeezing through, clinging to my drink until I finally emerged through the doorway, and I was, thank God, just standing outside by the pool table. So I returned to the main floor, and at no time during that night did I ever think, hey, I fit in now, or I belong. Those feelings would happen later in life, maybe during unexpected and brief moments of clarity here and there, which with any luck we can grab onto before they disappear. But by prolonging the comfort with who I was, because I was waiting for like this idealized external moment to provide that comfort to me, it didn't make things any easier. It just put off the inevitable growing pains that come with any next phase. So this is a lesson, even 20-something years later, that I'm still learning. And that night was also the beginning of a fantastic new world of questionable, regretful, and embarrassing decisions / learning experiences.
That was Jeff Mansk telling a story that he originally told on our live show that was themed Beginnings. That story also contains my favorite euphemism of all time, not kissing. Well, that's it for this show. I hope you enjoyed our humble first attempts at bringing Let's Just Say to you in this digital format. If you'd like to support Go Comedy during this difficult time, go to gocomedy.net and click on the donate button. And also while you're there, check out all of our other amazing digital content. If you'd like to follow Let's Just Say, find us on Facebook. You will always be updated when there's a new show posted, as well as you will be able to contact us if you want to be a storyteller on the show, which there has never been an easier time to be on this show because we are all doing it from our homes. Other than that, we hope that you have a wonderful day. Stay safe. We miss you, and we'll see you again soon.